What you're about to listen to is a conversation that I have with the CEO of Rio Defi, James Anderson. James is one of the smartest intellectuals that I have spoken to, and by listening to this conversation carefully, you're going to come away with some seriously valuable insights and knowledge about cryptocurrency and what's to come for the future of blockchain and crypto. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up, comment on the video, and subscribe to the channel if you like this video, so that we can get more guests on the show, just like James. Welcome to the DYOR Crypto Founders Report, where we speak to the leaders, pioneers, and inventors of the blockchain and crypto space. I'm Mustafa, the founder of DYOR Crypto, and if you're looking for someone to help you navigate and research the world of blockchain and crypto, then you've come to the right place. Follow now on YouTube, dyor-crypto.com, as well as Twitter, so you don't miss any of the fascinating guests that come on our show. Welcome back, everybody, to the DYOR Crypto Founders Report. Today, our guest is James Anderson. He is a graduate of the University of Pittsburgh. He co-founded 3 companies, and now he is the CEO of Rio Defi. I'm so glad to have him on the show today. James, welcome.
Thank you so much, Mustafa. It's a pleasure to be here and really excited to talk with you today.
Yeah, I can't wait to get into it. So before the interview, we were talking, and you told me that you're in Hong Kong right now at the Poly University of Hong Kong. Is that right?
Yeah, that's the room I'm in right now. There was an NFT event here actually just before this, so I popped right up to an empty room, and yeah.
Yeah, NFTs are a very hot topic right now, and everybody wants to know about that. So I think at some point we're gonna get into NFTs, yeah, I can't wait to talk about that. Now, you told me a story about. Now, I wasn't actually aware of this, but there was some kind of like civil unrest at the Poly University in 2019. Could you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, it's just in Hong Kong there was a series of protests. Actually, the Hong Kongers were, very up in arms about the some laws that had come about. I don't have all the sort of details, but basically, it ended up actually getting mostly stopped through China's national security law, which has.
So what happened? Like, what kind of events transpired there at the university in Hong Kong?
Yeah, at one point, I mean, the university was there was various parties involved. A lot of them young people who essentially took over the campus, you could say, and were barricading it against police coming in, and so it was kind of a chaotic event, you could say. But certainly people they believe that they're fighting for freedom and for their rights, and obviously people on the other side think it's disrupting the peace or harmony or something like this. So
yeah,
but the thing I like about PolyU is that they are quite a disruptive campus in the sense of very innovative. They have like a lot of high-tech programs, digital multimedia and design programs, and they have really, the students that come out of here are very creative and good thinking. So like I'm a huge fan of PolyU as a campus and the community here in Hong Kong. So yeah.
Yeah, we've come a long way from the way universities used to think about crypto and blockchain to where we are now. I was talking to Eric Pinos, an MIT grad, in my previous interview, and he was telling me how basically the universities didn't want to support blockchain and cryptocurrency. They were associating it with illicit activities, and now they're offering full-on curriculums. But I would imagine that in China, Hong Kong, etc., that they'd actually be more willing to sort of experiment, or would you say otherwise?
No, I would agree with that actually. Mainly in China has actually made blockchain one of its top initiatives of things to explore. So actually, it's a sector that a lot of money is going into. Of course, it's sort of contrast with cryptocurrencies, which they've actually put a sort of a ban on projects from doing fundraising, for example, the ICOs and things of this nature. They also put a stop to banks being able to deal with companies that trade cryptocurrencies or any sort of OTC traders and these kinds of things. So banks are have this mandate to stop servicing those people. And also the miners in China, basically they were shut down by the government because the government, said that there's concerns about the environmental impact of Bitcoin mining. There's probably also concerns about money laundering and taxation and these kinds of things. So, obviously Bitcoin is sort of censorship resistant. And so that has people that don't like that, right?
So what would you say is the reason why China and Hong Kong in general are not, or they're sort of like not anti-crypto, maybe? Would you use the word anti-cryptocurrency as a sort of a stance on it? What's the general stance
Actually,
in society there?
yeah, thanks. So the sort of laws in Hong Kong are actually very different than those in mainland China. So Hong Kong operates under like a British common law system and has very different rules compared to the mainland. And that includes, there's actually a cryptocurrency, like an exchange licensing regime that's coming out in Hong Kong. It's actually a great place to be for cryptocurrency companies. There's a lot of startups in Hong Kong that are operating here and have been for quite some time, plus new ones popping up all the time. So it's actually a very good hub in Southeast Asia for blockchain and cryptocurrency companies. So, I would say it's a very good place. How that might change over the coming years, it's hard to say. But I do think that, at least for the next few years, Hong Kong will continue to be a great place for blockchain startups. And when it comes to mainland China, there's certainly many other issues because of the, as I mentioned, there's these bans. So you can't get like bank accounts if you're a blockchain or cryptocurrency company. Maybe if you design blockchain applications or something like this that has nothing to do with cryptocurrency, but it's still probably a gray area. Of course, I'm not a lawyer or anything, so I can't really speak to the finer workings of this, but it is something that is challenging. And I think it's not just China. I mean, if you look at the U.S., the cryptocurrency laws right now, actually in Congress, there's the infrastructure bill that's being debated, and there's some cryptocurrency provisions in there that could significantly impact the industry in the U.S. And Brian Armstrong from Coinbase has come out very strongly against the sort of wording in the law that they're trying to put in, and he was in favor for one of the amendments to it. And so both he and Elon Musk promoted one of these amendments. I forget the exact three senators involved, but Toomey is one of them. But they're concerned that it'll affect cryptocurrency miners, that it'll affect people providing proof of stake services, like just even node operation services, even developers in the space who are building things for other companies. It could potentially impact them the way this legislation is written. And so it's actually quite damaging to the industry. So, even though different countries, there's all sorts of approaches they might take to cryptocurrency, it's important to state that, it's something that's definitely evolving globally. And, the regulated space is one that I think is going to continue to play a huge part in the evolution of cryptocurrency. There's, the governments around the world are going to continue to look into legislating cryptocurrencies. And this is actually, some people sort of, the pure crypto anarchists, DeFi people, who I am actually myself. But I see the need for this as well. Like, ultimately, even if you're an anarchist or something, you still believe in governance, maybe not governments as such, but there's an importance for like some sort of rule of law, and ultimately regulators, at least what they ostensibly are trying to do is to protect consumers, right? And to offer safeguards in the marketplace. And so, that's at their best what they're trying to do. But they don't necessarily understand the technology or the implications. But in order for the big money to come in order for VCs and traditional finance and the hedge funds and the pension funds and sovereign wealth funds and university funds and all these kinds of things, in order for those to come into the space more, you're going to have a regulated means of holding cryptocurrency. You're going to have banks that are custodying cryptocurrency, which is actually happening in the US and Germany and many other places over the coming months. And so, they've already signaled that they're moving in this direction. So I think it's going to be quite interesting to see how the regulators of the world continue to adapt to the various changes in cryptocurrency, because it's such a new industry and they don't really understand it in many cases. It's hard to wrap your head around. Even if you're in the space changes so quickly. So, what's true one day could be very different another. And so, I can empathize with them, and that it's a difficult thing probably to be a regulator. But it's important to sort of understand sort of both paths, right? You have when you're touching fiat, it's Jesus had this quote, "Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's." You gotta pay the piper there, and play by the rules of that ecosystem. But when you go sort of the fully DeFi path, you might not need to touch fiat currency at any point, and that's why you have decentralized exchanges. That's why you have these marketplaces with anonymity or at least pseudonymity. And so, I think both worlds can coincide, and I think they can actually work together quite well. A bit of a ramble, but
yeah, no, I think what you said is really relevant to what's going on right now. I'd like to go back to the point that you made about the current legislation that is in process of actually, like, the stuff that's actually happening right now in Congress and in the government here in the U.S. So would you say you're familiar with the accounts that are of the legislation that is currently being worked on?
Yeah, I'm not like super familiar in the weeds with it, but I understand the gist of it, which is that it's changing some of the wording around how cryptocurrency is taxed. And the proposed legislation could be quite damaging to the industry if it's not amended, because of it could impact, as I mentioned, the miners, the staking node operators, even blockchain developers, some people who have no, if they're being paid in crypto, or if they're, even touching crypto for other people, like even for test tokens. There's interesting interpretations to the law. It's a bit too vague, the way they're writing it, and it can actually create a huge overreach, and potentially a lot of privacy concerns, because it would actually make cryptocurrency players, whether they be companies or even developers and individuals in the space, could actually subject them to more stringent regulations than when you'd actually find for financial institutions, like regulated financial institutions. So that, to me, is just a step in the wrong direction. And I think a lot of people will agree. You've seen a strong outpouring of support from the cryptocurrency community for the amendment to change this proposed wording. So we'll see what happens in Congress. So this is an evolving situation. And, they say, oh, well, it can be changed later, or if it's being used in the wrong way. But, it's better to change it before it actually becomes a law, right? Before thing goes in the wrong direction.
So they're currently at the stage of what? They're still voting on it. They haven't voted on it.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't checked today, but I think as of yesterday, it was like going through the Senate, and then I think it has to go to the House of Representatives.
How's it looking so far? Do we have support, or are we against? What side is winning right now? Do you think?
I haven't checked the news today on it, so I'll have to see. But it's conclusive, I would say, as of this moment. That I last looked at it, and
inconclusive.
Inconclusive. So we'll have to see. But Congress is trying to push through this infrastructure spending bill very quickly, because they're saying, we need this to improve, America's infrastructure and to help people out during COVID, and all the excuses they give for printing trillions of dollars, because I think it's a $3.5 trillion spending bill. So it could create massive inflation also. But they're trying to, through these bills, they oftentimes put other wording in there that,
like a Trojan horse, sort of trying to slip some kind of an agenda into it without people noticing it.
Exactly, because they're saying, oh, well, this is infrastructure, and infrastructure includes internet infrastructure, and it includes, network infrastructure, and that can include blockchains and cryptocurrencies. So here's, what we want to propose, and, this kind of thing. So I think it's rushed, and I think, they're trying to use this potentially to pay for the bill,
Mm.
by increasing taxation on certain industries, including the cryptocurrency industry, to pay for this, huge, massive spending bill.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I think personally that it could significantly damage the industry if it goes through the way it's written, because it could make a lot of cryptocurrency companies move outside of the US. And ultimately, that's going to be bad for the United States because, right now, at least, I think it's seen as a pretty good place to do blockchain startups and cryptocurrencies. Certainly, it's, if you want to do some sort of initial coin offering or things of this nature, maybe the US isn't the best place. But if you, have certain types of businesses that you want to scale, or if you want to be a development studio doing blockchain, development, or even node operation services, Bitcoin mining, a lot of the miners actually from China have moved to the US now.
Hmm.
And so, I think it would be a foolish move if the US were to start heavily regulating the industry when it's actually poised to become one of the top global countries for digital currencies and for blockchain adoption. So
So
I
this
think
is a pivotal moment for the United States, and how they decide here could be the fate of the rest of the history of America.
yeah, absolutely. And actually, it's kind of a bold thing to say, but I'm not the only one saying it for sure. There's not too many times where these kind of decisions get made, and this is one of them actually, where it could significantly impact the industry and not in a good way. So I hope that cooler minds prevail and that they're able to modify the legislation so that it's not damaging the industry.
Well, besides calling our senators, which I've done, what else can we do to sort of help America and maybe even other nations to do the right thing when it comes to this kind of legislation?
Yeah, I think it can be sharing the message, maybe retweeting posts. I think Elon Musk had a good post on it, so I probably need to do more about this too. It could be, texting or calling senators. It can be, yeah, really just amplifying the message in whatever way you can. And also just to, um, well, for those inclined to get involved, in the legislative process. Some people like that. Personally, I'm more of one who likes to focus on the building and the creating of new startups, things of this nature, which is why I've been sort of a serial entrepreneur. But I think it's important, for the people that are skilled with the legislative process, that's also a great path. And people that, journalists to write about it. So, use your specific skill set. And, for some people, it's not everyone's battle to fight either. But, wherever you are in the world, just talking about cryptocurrency, share it with your friends, get more people on the side of DeFi, decentralized finance, blockchains and cryptocurrencies, because these are technologies that can actually change the world for the better. I truly believe that. And that's why I got into the space all the way back in 2013, actually. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, actually, I want to talk about that too. So you went to the University of Pittsburgh. What year did you go to the University of Pittsburgh?
Yeah. So I went from 2006 to 2010
Okay,
and
and,
graduated.
and then like, tell us the story of how you started, at the university, and you ended up in Hong Kong as a CEO for a DeFi company.
Sure, sure. So yeah, actually back in high school, I was already of the mindset that I wanted to get into entrepreneurship. So I knew that business was the path for me. Not everyone knows that when they get into college, but I started out as a business major, and my major shifted between different fields of business, but it was always sort of a business mind. And so I ended
Did
up
you have any
graduating.
businesses before college? Did you start any businesses prior to that?
I did not, at least none that were successful or anything. But I mean, I guess as a child, I sold lemonade at like the corner
Yeah.
one time, this kind of thing. I actually did do like a Kool-Aid stand and used to do that. And I always, kids play various games, and I always found it fun to play like the game of store or something. You set up a little shop and, whatever. So I always found this to be an interesting thing for whatever reason. I think and then games, like I was always into the collectibles. So I used to play Pogs at one point. I did Pokemon cards, Yu-Gi-Oh cards, these kind of collectible card games, which of course now are hugely back in vogue. And NFTs as well, obviously, are a form of collectibles. So, this was something I was always interested in. And then when it came to college, I think I just realized that, my gifts were more around connecting with people, via whether it be sales or marketing or these kind of things. So I ended up in marketing, actually, marketing and human resources, because both, touch people in a very, personal way. And I'm a very extroverted person. And so I, just enjoy, these kinds of conversations. Like for me, brainstorming and sharing ideas, something that really gets me excited, because it's where, you really get to see other people also to light up and to shine when they're sharing something they love. And I think, anything that we can do to, promote good ideas. I mean, ultimately at its core, marketing is something where you're trying to tap into people's psychology and amplify messages, right? And ideally, there's sort of manipulative ways to use marketing, but then there's also the good ways of like, just making sure that, let's say you have a great product, but it's not getting out there, right? It needs better distribution channels. It needs better messaging. It needs to find the people that can share this thing. And so, this was something that really interested me. Maybe it was because I was also religious when I was growing up. And so, there's some of that when it comes to religion. Obviously, some people are very keen on proselytizing and sharing thoughts. My religion changed quite a lot over the years, from Christian to atheist to now more Buddhist. But I find that, these ideas, for me, it was always like the realm of ideas was something quite intriguing. And I love talking about them. Intellectual person. I read a lot and study a lot. And I think I watch a lot of YouTubers, actually. That's probably my key main thing these days. So I'm glad to be, talking on your channel. And I encourage everyone to like and subscribe to this channel because it's super important. I mean, that's how I actually learned. I would say over half of my crypto knowledge comes from crypto YouTubers. I also read a lot of white papers and delve into the tokenomics and this kind of thing. So actually, with my college degree, I was a minor in economics. And what I love about cryptocurrency is actually like applied economics. Normally, you don't get to test out new economic models and see how they impact societies, or in this case, communities, a smaller version of society, very rapidly. It can take, hundreds of years sometimes, or at least, decades to see how an economic system might play out. But with cryptocurrencies and with these token economic models, you can actually sort of test it out in the wild with various communities and see how these things, evolve and change. And, it's not just the tokenomics, obviously, that lead to a project success or failure. Most of the time it's based on the team and, is their heart really in it? Or do they have the capabilities to accomplish what they set out to do? It could also be sometimes regulations get in the way or whatever the case may be. But so my journey into cryptocurrency actually came through economics. I was, had various jobs outside of college. I was in sales. Then I did some purchasing, and throughout that time, I was just studying like what's happening in the world. Because during my college, it was, the 2008 financial crisis was like midway through college. Mm-hmm. So I was looking at the world and I was like, what just happened to the global financial system? I think we probably all, have memories of that time. And it's like, okay, suddenly the housing market's collapsing. What the hell? I thought housing was supposed to go up forever, or like at least most of the time. And
all our paradigms were shattered at that point.
Yeah, I mean, you saw these huge government bailouts, and then people are like, is the US socialist? Like, what happened to like free market capitalism when you're having, giant companies that are needing these massive taxpayer bailouts of billions or even trillions of dollars? And it really puts into question the nature of the system that people are participating in. And, it points out a lot of the cracks and the flaws in that system. And so I started studying more about that. And then that got me down the path of what is money? What is sound money? And so I looked at gold and silver. I was actually a huge gold and silver bug back in 2011, 2012. So right after college, I started to see that in the wake of 2008 financial crisis, there was a lot of money printing, and this I thought was going to lead to a pending hyperinflation of the dollar, which has not happened yet, but still could. But what ultimately it's mathematics, and they can there's huge advances in human society, and obviously the growth of technology and the productivity of people has significantly increased over the years. However, because of inflation and because we've had sort of a lot of our purchasing power siphoned away to let's say the connected classes of like, the bankers, the politicians, et cetera, the sort of moneyed elites, you could say. This is actually, I think many people would be much, much richer in society had the inflation not been there. And I think the only reason we haven't seen huge inflation yet is because the productivity and technological gains were so massive from the internet and from just all the technological advancements we've had in the past 30 years that the inflation kind of, made it seem like, oh, life is, roughly the same and it's, whatever. People did maybe start to feel poorer. Like you used to be able to buy a house with a single provider's income, maybe back in the 1950s, and you can buy a house, a car, and provide for the family and stuff on one income. Now you obviously pretty much need two, and then you need to go into debt for most people, and so you have this huge change. Anyway, so this whole study of like economics and economic history and sound money got me into Bitcoin, because it was like, well, Bitcoin is something that is outside of the control of the traditional financial system, at least at the time. And I think still is ultimately. But, it was something very new because this was back 2012, 2013. And I actually went to this, it was called Pork Fest, and it was a libertarian freedom festival in New Hampshire. And I go there and I'm shocked because people are using Bitcoin. They're calling dollars. They're calling them FRNs or Federal Reserve notes, and they don't want it. Pay them in Bitcoin. If you have those FRNs, they kind of like look at you weird, like, why are you paying this dirty money? And I was like,
I've never heard that before. FRN.
FRN, yeah, it's not a common thing, but for me, it was like really, it's kind of a paradigm shift. Like you go there and just like your world is upended, and you're like, okay, what, this new payment system? Okay, I'll try it out. So it was like mobile payments, which in most of the world is very common right now. But back in 2013, it was actually, it was maybe more common in China, but still not very common in the US. And so people were paying with Bitcoin on their phones, although the Wi-Fi wasn't actually very good there at some point. So, you kind of maybe had to use like your data, but then it was a campground. So that wasn't also good. So sometimes actually the cash made more sense. But anyway, there was a lot of crypto OGs there actually. So Eric Voorhees was there, the founder of Shapeshift and Satoshi Dice and a number of other projects in the crypto space over time. Vitalik Buterin was there. We all know him, obviously.
Did you get to meet him?
I did. I met him. I actually got a Bitcoin magazine from him, which I still have in my office. So
what was he doing there? Was he like a member, or was he a speaker?
So he was a speaker. He was talking about smart contracts and sort of the future of, I think, DeFi, really. I forget what the talk was titled, but he was basically talking about how blockchain and blockchain technologies and things like smart contracts could change the nature of human interactions, especially when it comes to things like law and getting rid of the middlemen and financial transactions, how you can have trustless savings programs and things of this nature. And so, for me, it was my first time hearing about this concept of a smart contract and like these if-then statements, how they apply in computing, that they could actually be applied to money.
What year was this in?
This was in 2013. So it's called Portfest X. It was the 10th year of that festival. And so, yeah, he was there working for Bitcoin Magazine at the time. So this was prior to Ethereum. And then he, the Ethereum ICO, if you want to call it that, the crowd sale, it launched in, I believe it was either June or July, I think June 2014.
Yeah, I think the story of Vitalik was that he worked for the magazine and he had some ideas that were dismissed. Basically, people didn't want to hear what he had to say, so he went and started Ethereum. Yeah,
because there were a lot of, and still are a lot of Bitcoin maximalists, right? These people that think, it has to be Bitcoin, nothing else can work or whatever. And to me, I've never understood that position ever, because when I look at market economics, it's always about innovating. It's always about changing. And, this sort of like church of Bitcoin, this dogma about, it can only be Bitcoin. That's the only cryptocurrency that has value. Like, I love Bitcoin. Don't get me wrong. I think it's like a digital gold. I think it's great censorship resistant money. I think it's, for me, Bitcoin's a better store of value than a currency for daily use. But of course, it can also be used for daily use. But it's kind of like, if you have gold and it's going up all the time, do you really want to spend your gold? You might just want to hold it, right? So Bitcoin's very good for hodling, but maybe, you want to spend the money that's devaluing every day. So if you have anything based in like fiat currencies, US dollars, whatever, that's what you want to spend. You don't want to spend your Bitcoin, ideally. So, there's different thinking around that, but I've never understood that sort of maximalist position. So for me,
does Bitcoin have what's Bitcoin's potential for programmability?
Yeah, it's something quite interesting. To be honest, I am not a programmer, so I can't speak to the inner workings of this. But I think what Jack Dorsey, with the founder of Twitter, and Square, so he's doing a lot now around DeFi on Bitcoin. So I don't know what form that'll take and how it's going to work from a technical perspective, but it's definitely something I'll be tracking, and I'm quite eager to see what happens there. I do think the Bitcoin network is obviously super solid. Even more so now, actually, after China's Bitcoin mining ban, because one of the key criticisms of Bitcoin, especially from people in the West, was that too much of the mining power is centralized in China, and maybe whether it's owned by the Chinese government or can be certainly manipulated by the Chinese government, PRC. This was something of a concern for many people, and actually, so now that they've cracked down, it's like, well, that what other tools do they have for Bitcoin mining, right? They've already banned it. They've already driven people out of the country. So actually, I'm kind of glad that this has happened now, because it's a bit of like a ripping off of the Band-Aid, or like, fixing, this is their big thing and they've done it. So now it's out of the way. So crypto can grow from here. So obviously we had the market crash after that and a lot of other news that came out. But for me, it's a good thing because it's a healthy evolution. Now the mining's more decentralized, which is ultimately what we want, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's a huge positive improvement, actually.
So what happened to you after this event? Like, how were you transformed, and how did that lead you onto the rest of your career?
Yeah, so thank you. For me, that really lit a fire under me. I was already libertarian in philosophy, and but to see it in practice like that, to see people actually using a new form of money in, they were calling it a temporary autonomous zone, this sort of free space outside of the system of government. They had their own government, they had their own laws, they had their own rules. I mean, obviously, don't hit people, don't steal their stuff, be kind to each other, these kinds of natural things that we all, as humans, I think pretty much all of us agree on most of the time, right? Or, we might not always follow those things, right? But we at least generally agree that those are good rules to live by. And so, seeing libertarianism applied in action and this new form of money, it really, kickstarted me. Okay, I need to learn more about Bitcoin. So I bought some Bitcoin while I was there so I could spend it. Well, there, I actually did use some of it for gambling. So actually, I funded that trip by gambling, which was interesting. I got free slot play coupons from the casino in Pittsburgh, and you basically just go. You could use it through. You gamble $20. You're walking out. It was something you had to spend 20, but then you get 20 more or something. So I'd always walk out with a little bit more than I came in with, at least. And I actually ended up getting a few $100s from all of that over the course of a month or two. And then did some ride service where I gave people, they joined me on the ride to New Hampshire. So the whole thing was basically covered through that. And so anyway, it's interesting because a lot of people in crypto now associate it with gambling, and there's this sort of speculative element to it. But, it is something that's been with crypto from the very beginning in many ways. And so, I think because of, maybe that industry has some sort of innovation also. And it's on the fringe of society. So maybe that's why. But anyway, so from there, I saw that I really needed to study more, and there was a lot more to learn. And so I just kept, reading more and more about the space, listening to people on YouTube. And actually from there, my good friend, Matt McKibben, he actually helped me to get some Bitcoin to invest into Ethereum during their crowd sale in 2014. So obviously that was ended up being a life-changing moment for me, because from there I held on to it for quite a while. Obviously now when there's these ICOs and various token launches, the things happen fast and tokens like instantly liquid. It's on a decentralized exchange, all this kind of stuff. But actually at that time, Ethereum didn't even have a wallet for like almost a year after that crowd sale, at least not a wallet that the average person could use. It might have had a command line wallet for developers, but if you were, if you needed a front end user interface, then it was going to be difficult actually until the Mist wallet came out, which was like sort of the software-based wallet. So that was, in 2015. So I kept working at the time. I actually shifted careers. So I was actually in sort of a government or a job that was a contractor for the government, purchasing parts actually for nuclear submarines. So it was like a military contractor job. Going from that to actually nonprofits. So I worked at the Bill of Rights Institute. I worked at the Foundation for Economic Education, and I worked for a place called the Institute for Humane Studies. All of these places which promote the ideals of liberty, freedom, economics, and trying to educate people on these things, the rule of law, why the Bill of Rights was important, why economic freedom is important, and why liberalism as an ethos can be important to have people have the right to voice their ideas and have open debates and discussions about it. And, as long as they're doing that peaceably, it should be allowed, right? And so I got into this space fighting for these ideas because, for me, like we had that talk, earlier in the conversation about what can you do, right? And oftentimes you feel like, oh, I'm just a small person, I have no impact on the world. A lot of us can feel that way at various times, but we actually do have a significant impact if we are doing what our strengths, if we're following where our strengths lie, we can actually significantly impact people. Even if you just impact one person, the person most close to you, your friends, your significant other, whatever, that has importance and value. And I think it's we should help each other to realize that more often. So fighting for those ideas gave me a sense of like, personal accomplishment, because it's like, hey, I'm actually able to make a difference. I was seeing, at least in students' lives, I was seeing them change and, their thinking kind of grow and having these kind of intellectual conversations that were really stimulating for me. And so from there, actually, I kept my Ethereum and watched that space evolve. And actually in 2016, I invested in the Dow, which was the thing that ended up being hacked in a big way.
Can you tell us about that?
Exploited.
The Dow hack?
Yeah. So back then it was the sort of the largest and maybe one of the first ICOs to come out of the Ethereum ecosystem. And it was supposed to be, so it's the DAO, right? The Decentralized Autonomous Organization. It was supposed to be basically this incubator DAO that would help crypto startups to get funding to build dApps within the Ethereum ecosystem. So it was totally, it makes sense. And actually, obviously today we know and love DAOs, like there's, thousands of them popping up all over the place. But at the time, this was the first of such organizations being formed, and they had a really good proposal and it seemed really great. Obviously the code though ended up having vulnerabilities in it, and it was exploited, which led to the Ethereum hard fork. And this was a super contentious issue at the time, and it probably still is. I debated a number of people on this issue actually at that time as well, because libertarians on both sides had different views of it as well. For some people, it was like, no, code is law. This is immutable. You can't change it no matter what happens. So that was sort of the people on that side tended to support no hard fork. And some of them might have even jumped to Ethereum Classic, which basically kept the blockchain data the same. They didn't change that. For me, I sort of jumped on the side of, hey, we have a known fraudulent activity here. It's significant. It impacts the entire Ethereum ecosystem, potentially in a way that will take the whole thing down, because it was, I think, $160 million or something was raised for the DAO. And I forget how much of that, maybe 2/3 was lost to the exploiter. I'm forgetting the exact numbers, but it was significant. And it certainly was enough to really cripple the blockchain industry, in my opinion. So, it's like if you have a bank robber and you know you see them right there and they have a big pile of money and you have the ability to get that money back and give it back to the account holders of the bank, why wouldn't you do that, right? And so the Ethereum community came together, and I would say the majority of the community wanted to, repair this by having the hard fork to change, the transaction data to take the money away from the exploiter. And there was also a significant movement actually right after the hack to recover those funds, which the white hat hackers were able to recover a large portion of funds as well. I think tens of millions of dollars. I forget the exact amount, but
So this was the first of a kind of event, right? This was like the first hack, the first sort of DeFi, somewhat of a DeFi protocol. It was a lot of firsts, right?
Yeah, maybe certainly the first big one that I had heard about, but I think it was also maybe the most notable for sure. And it was something that very much, the Ethereum price dropped in half. I think it was around $20, maybe dropped to less than $10 or something like this at that time around this event. And then actually everyone got two versions of Ethereum because there was a hard fork. So people got both the Ethereum and the Ethereum Classic. And then there was this weird thing called a relay attack where if you sent Ethereum without updating your wallet or something, you would lose your ETH because it would the transaction data was not going between both chains. I forget exactly how it worked, but I did it to myself actually, and I lost a bunch of Ethereum and I had to contact a security person. I was able to recover it, but I had to contact someone and I paid them a consulting fee to help me fix it because I was like, this is, I lost a significant amount of ETH at the time, but I fully recovered it, so it was fine.
And was this the reason why Ethereum split between Ethereum Classic and forked over to the Ethereum that we know now? This is the reason why?
It's because of the Dow hack. So basically, the Ethereum Classic chain kept the Dow hack as if it, it kept it in the code, it kept all those transactions, didn't reverse any of them. Whereas Ethereum main chain reversed those transactions that were related to the hack. So, to me, that was the right path to go down. And of course, then all the Ethereum core developers, some of them did go probably and work on Ethereum Classic. I'm not exactly sure, but at least all the main ones that I know of stuck with, Ethereum per Vitalik's vision of the network. And part of, this also led to a number of conversations around on-chain governance, what exists now versus what could exist, because a lot of people are concerned, hey, we don't know enough, whether the community actually agrees on this or not. But the Ethereum Foundation kind of made maybe an executive decision. I think they did have overwhelming support from what I could tell, but some people felt it was rushed and all this kind of stuff. But I think they made the right call. I think now that Ethereum's over $3,000 again, I think shows that they made the right call. And you can look at Ethereum Classic. I have nothing against that community as well. I think for me, blockchain is all about trial and error. Try a bunch of different things. Go with the community that serves you best. But yeah.
Doesn't Grayscale have an Ethereum Classic fund?
I think they probably do. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting to me that it's still very relevant to be looking at Ethereum Classic. Yeah, maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later. But I'd love to hear the rest of your story of sort of what happened after the Dow hack.
Yeah. So after the Dow hack, let's see, it was so that was in 2016, and I kept working for the that was Institute for Humane Studies at the time, and then leading into from 2016 to 2017. So I was working there for about a year, and then at that point, Ethereum actually shot up from $10 to over $100. And for me, this was life-changing wealth at that point, because when I invested in Ethereum, I think it was around 30 cents, something like this. I didn't put a lot in, but enough to make a significant impact. I did sell some at various points, but not too much. And so for me, I was able to quit my job, go full-time into cryptocurrency, because I saw the space. Wow. It was summer 2017. So it was before that I started making the plans back in maybe April, and then started building the blockchain investor business with my business partner at the time, Trace Danette. And so we really saw that it was going to be critically important to have education, because a lot of people were, to this day, obviously, I still think crypto education is extremely important. So I'm glad we're having this conversation because, it's all about figuring out, okay, you want a wallet. What kind of wallets are safe? How do you keep that wallet safe? What's your, mnemonic phrase? Or, I think MetaMask made a good decision to call it like secret recovery phrase and make it more understandable for people.
Yeah.
So it's not
Yeah.
like weird concept.
Yeah. About that, Alex Mashinsky, which was one of my previous interviews, he said that what they're sort of like a CeFi DeFi company.
Yes.
And what he said was that mass adoption, it's just not going to happen until we can create what he calls bridges, which are applications that people can interface with, like that are like really simple, really just like an iMessage app or something really simple that doesn't require people to even have to deal with wallets and passphrases and things like that. So my question is, how long do you think it will take to get to that point where it's as simple as going on your Safari web browser, or it just eliminates all those steps that people typically use as have as obstacles to getting into crypto. Some people don't like understand what even is a wallet, right? And things like of that nature. And I think that's really the biggest obstacle. How long do you think it'll take for us to get to that point where we have something that's really pretty much doesn't require any thought to doing?
Yeah, so great question. And I totally agree with Alex Mashinsky. I think this is a key point that's hindering mass adoption of cryptocurrency. And I actually met him back, I think it was 2018 at a blockchain conference. He's a super knowledgeable guy.
Yeah.
And I really like the work that Celsius is doing. Actually, they were part of the inspiration for Rio DeFi to kind of create these bridges between CeFi and DeFi. And so, we totally agree on that path. I think actually the technology is already there to some degree for this.
Yeah.
I think it will proliferate much more over the next year. So I think within a year, we'll have exactly what you're talking about. I mean, I would say
Wow.
Coinbase has kind of done that to some degree because, I mean, even my parents bought cryptocurrency on Coinbase, super simple,
Yeah.
very easy if you're in the US, right? But it's
Yeah.
not everywhere in the world yet. And I think, there's also still a learning curve that comes with it. And so it can be difficult to do things. We need to get to the point where it's, as easy as email or, maybe even easier than that, maybe as easy as, like Instagram or something like this. But basically, actually, this is something that Rio DeFi is really focused on. So we actually, with our wallet, we have an OAuth solution that allows people to create a wallet account using their Gmail or like Facebook or other social media accounts so that they don't have to, understand what a mnemonic phrase is. They don't have to, deal with all of that if they don't want to. And it's very simple and easy to use. And so I think that's a critical factor, as you mentioned. And what we're continuing to do, and I think over the next year, what we'll be able to do is to not just take the wallet, but make the exchange experience much easier, to make the, DApp, decentralized application experience much easier, and to integrate these all under one ecosystem so that you don't have to bounce around from like, okay, I have a MetaMask wallet, but I have to go to this exchange to buy cryptocurrency, to buy the Ether, to send to my wallet and blah, blah, blah. It's like there's so many steps and you have to understand each of these. And you have to trust all these companies or at least understand what these companies are so you feel like you can trust it. And for the average person, that's too much. I'm already lost, right?
Absolutely. Even for the people like us, it can be overwhelming because we're busy people. We don't have time to be like, I need to check on this transaction to see where it's at, or So even for us, it's still not even to the point where we want it to be yet.
Yeah, I totally agree. And this is one of the reasons why we built on Substrate for Rio DeFi. So we have Rio Chain, which is built on Substrate framework, which is designed by Parity Technologies.
Can you tell us about can you tell us a little bit about Substrate? Because I'm actually doing a series on Polkadot and Substrate, but I'd love to hear your take on it. Can you describe it? I know you're maybe from a non-programmer perspective, it actually might be better because I've been hearing it from programmers. Maybe you can tell us in your own words, like, what is Substrate?
Yeah. So, and again, so I'm not a programmer, but I think basically Substrate is a framework for building blockchains. It's like a language, kind of like, Solidity being a sort of formation of a type of JavaScript, I think. But
so Parity is like a programming language?
yeah, Substrate is like a well, Rust is the programming language, but Substrate's like a framework. It's like a how do you call it? Like conceptual design architecture for how these types of blockchains can be built. So and it provides for this interoperability within either the Kusama or the Polkadot ecosystem. And so it's a framework for how to do transactions, how to have on-chain governance. This can be modified in a number of ways. So each layer one chain that's built on Substrate can have different tokenomics. It can have different governance procedures and everything else, but it has this sort of a set of tools that Parity Technology is the ones who created Polkadot and Kusama.
And that's with Gavin Wood, right?
Yeah, Gavin Wood, who is one of the co-founders of Ethereum. Yeah. He was the CTO for the Ethereum Foundation as well. And so, Dr. Gavin Wood, he is super knowledgeable, and I think his views of on-chain governance are very like, I guess you could say futuristic, but also like they're presently happening. And I think it's very important to have this kind of like shared security layer within the Polkadot ecosystem, so that even a network, the idea here is that even if you're, let's say, a parachain that only has maybe tens of millions or a few hundred million of transaction or of market cap of value on your blockchain, if you become a parachain of the Polkadot network or of the Kusama network, you can actually share your transaction data, your block history up to that network, and then you gain access to that sort of like immutability, the record keeping of that parent network, which is much harder to attack because it has tens of billions of dollars of value rather than just like a few hundred million or even tens of millions of dollars of value. Mm-hmm. So, basically, if you can become a parachain, then you have access to sending this transaction data up to the larger network, which provides the security of a super robust, super tested, nominated proof of stake network. And especially because, in the grand scheme of things, proof of stake is still relatively new. Obviously, Ethereum is making the switch now from proof of work to proof of stake ecosystem. The difference between sort of the proof of stake and then nominated proof of stake is, how the validator nodes are sort of selected. And, nominated proof of stake is very similar to delegated proof of stake. In its relation to the voting and the governance process. So this is, this on-chain governance, right? And this, so Substrate has a number of benefits and should provide for forkless upgrades of the chain, so you can constantly evolve the code without needing to, do these hard forks. Because obviously we've seen Ethereum, successful recently with the London hard fork, which is huge. Now there's the burning of Ethereum and the economic model, which is great. And I think, that was hard won. It took.
Can you go into that a little bit? Because it's a new thing. It's a new concept. Ethereum's, they call it the London fork, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you give us a description of the changes that are happening?
Yeah, I think it's EIP 1559, if I'm not mistaken. And this basically ushered in some changes to how gas fees work. So moving, I think, to, and I might get this slightly wrong, but to an auction system, or maybe it previously was. Anyway, one of the key changes was that it changed how the gas fees are spent. Basically, it used to go 100% to the miners, but now a significant portion is actually burnt. So the Ethereum is, taken out of the supply. So Ethereum is inflationary in general, in the sense of like over a year, it does increase the amount of total tokens. And so this creates some deflationary force. I think it's still more inflationary than deflationary at the current moment, but it's significant when they're burning tens of millions of dollars worth of Ethereum per day. I mean, I haven't looked today specifically, but I think on the first day it was, I forget, like around maybe $60 million worth of Ethereum or something like this. So it's like quite a significant amount of money, of Ethereum was burnt. And so obviously this has, an impact on the price of the token based on the pure economics of it.
Yeah. And how is that different from the way Polkadot's tokenomics or economics works?
Sure. So basically, what could have happened in the London hard fork, it could have actually, you could have had someone else take all the transaction data and say, no, we don't agree with this. Maybe some of the miners could have said, look, we think this is the wrong path to go down. This hurts our profit. We don't like this. We're going to keep this other older version of Ethereum or this different version of Ethereum. We're going to, take half the miners and go this way, and you guys can go this way. I mean, a lot of people were worried about that for a while. Now, obviously, it took time. That's why they took longer than expected, because you have to build the consensus within the mining community why this is still the right move for them, even if it does impact their profit in the short term, because they're going to get less ETH per transaction, per set of transactions that they validate. But if the Ethereum price goes up, then obviously that might still make them more money than if they got more ETH at a lower price, right? So there was this it's a different way of handling governance. It's more off-chain, maybe really in person in some ways, because you have to build this consensus, with various parties. And I mean, look, at the end of the day, it's all dealing with humans at some level, so you do have to create some sort of consensus. But with the nominated proof of stake ecosystem, you have this governance process happening on chain, so people actually signal the direction for the chain to go in through a voting mechanism. And basically, let's say you as someone staking, let's say Polkadot, you nominate a validator, and that validator can then vote on your behalf using your the stake dot to go in the on-chain governance, sort of like a representative democracy in a way. Now, some of the people in the Polkadot ecosystem are actually passing down the votes, so you can, still vote with the dot that you're staking with that nominator. I don't think all of them do that though. And so this is like a different way of handling the governance. That way you can signal which direction, and it's all recorded on chain, and the community can signal which direction they want to move in. And then you can have an upgrade of the chain without forking, because, the majority, based on whatever governance rules are in that protocol, have agreed to it. And so, beforehand that this thing's going to succeed because it's on chain recorded. So it's a different way of viewing the governance of the blockchain networks, and each one has its pluses and minuses. But and that's why I think both are important. I mean, I'm still a huge fan of Ethereum. Obviously, it changed my life. But we're building within the Polkadot ecosystem for Rio Chain, also within the Ethereum ecosystem, because I think you're still going to have many Ethereum dApps. So we're doing work within the Ethereum ecosystem also, but we're building our core infrastructure on Substrate for interoperability with Polkadot, because we think that framework for cross-chain interoperability, the way Polkadot's designed the architecture of the ecosystem, we think it's going to be one of the best ways to resolve this issue over time. So we'll see, of course, but I'm very bullish, obviously, on the Polkadot ecosystem. And I think also Rust has a lot of good characteristics. It is more difficult, though, to find programmers with knowledge of Rust and experience in Rust, because it is, first of all, a newer programming language. And so because of that, it's harder. But then also Substrate is much newer than, Solidity and, Solidity.
If anybody out there knows Rust, be sure to reach out to James.
Yes, please do. We're always looking for good Rust developers. So that would be great.
Yeah. So how did you get the idea for Rio, or tell us what was the genesis of Rio? Where did that start?
Sure. So I was talking with some colleagues, actually our co-founders, Calvin Ung, he's our president, and Katerina Volkova, our vice president, and Stefan Laurent, our CMO. So we had all met through various blockchain events, and actually met Calvin through a good friend, Gino Yu, who's actually a professor here at Hong Kong PolyU. And so I met Calvin in 2018, and we stayed in touch. And then, in 2019, we all got together, and we basically said, look, we think there's something happening, in the crypto, because it was the bear market. Remember, I think maybe March 2019, Bitcoin was all-time lows. So we started talking. We're like, look, it can't get much worse than this. The thing's going to come back. We need something around blockchain, like savings and lending. People are going to want to generate yields on Bitcoin and on Ether and on stable coins. And, what is the next innovation of blockchain? DeFi was already there, but we could sense that it was going to be a trend. And so that's why we chose the name Rio DeFi. Rio is the Spanish word for river, and it signifies liquidity, the flow of money and wealth in society. So, and water has a tendency to be around commerce. Actually, I was in the business fraternity Delta Sigma Pi, and so there's this kind of symbolism also of water and commerce, obviously with shipping and things like this. But in Asian culture as well, money is kind of goes with water as an element.
Currency.
Yeah, currency. Exactly, the currents that you see. I like Arthur Brock talks about this with Holochain and sort of you see these currents, and so that's where the energy flows. And to me, money is like energy in liquid form. So this kind of Rio, this river, this water, and then DeFi, obviously decentralized finance. And so we formed this to basically, have something that bridges the two worlds, because we knew that the sort of, I consider it like the left-hand path of centralization and sort of the right-hand path, so the left has its, benefits, and it also has its negatives. Same with sort of the crypto wonderland, utopia, let's say, of DeFi, the future, but it's a bit chaotic, whereas this is more orderly on the left-hand side. It's more rigid, but it's also slower, but it's maybe more efficient in some ways. But then this DeFi stuff, okay, it's more efficient in other ways, but it might lose you all your money because the protocol hasn't been audited, or it was audited, but it was hacked. And so, you have all these different paths. And so it's like, look, both sides have their merits. Let's bridge them together and take the benefits from each to create a hybrid system. But, you can still have pure DeFi and you use it when you need to. And you have your pure CeFi and you use it when you need to. And then you have the hybrid model, which you also use when you need to. And so it's like this bridge from the old world to the new. I think Buckminster Fuller had a really good quote about, you don't just fight what's old, you kind of have to build what is new. And I'm botching the quote, but, this is like something that, transcend and include the sort of Ken Wilber integral model. And so I think this is something that's important to do, because look, you're always going to have some part of society. I mean, people just are used to banking, they're used to having something, and it makes sense. Like, okay, if I lose access to my account, if I lose my password, or if I lose my, access to email, it's like, there's a way to restore it. Right. But if you lose your mnemonic phrase, there's no way to restore it. And that's a problem for a lot of people, and it prevents mass adoption. So, you can be your own bank, and I think that's hugely valuable to do. Everyone go be your own bank. But you can also have like a sort of banking service in the crypto space that can be trustworthy. And, that's why regulated institutions are coming into play. And I think, it's about being as transparent as you can be, within these systems. And obviously, with blockchain, it's all about recording the data in a way that everyone can see. And so, there's ways of getting licenses and working with regulators to understand, okay, what are the concerns? How can we make this safe for people? What is the banking system doing? Obviously they've been able to protect digital money for quite a while, and most banks do pretty well. They don't get hacked and lose all their clients' funds, right? So there's things we can learn from both sides, in my opinion. So, yeah.
Very interesting. So what do you think is the future of DeFi? Is it going to be more of like what you're saying, like a hybrid model? Can you describe what a world of DeFi would look like for the average person?
Sure. So I do think that you're going to have sort of these both paths, and I think they'll both continue to evolve. So I think cryptocurrency will, certainly Bitcoin and Ether will continue to be regulated by governments around the world, or at least they'll attempt to regulate it in various ways. And
like, will I be able to deposit Bitcoin at my local bank, at my credit union, or
yeah,
buy from them, or be able to get a loan of Bitcoin out from my bank?
yeah, I 100% believe that's coming. And in fact, banks in the US have already announced this for the institutional clients, for the high net worths, for the wealthy individuals. It's going to eventually work its way down to retail customers. Banks are moving toward custodying crypto in a secure manner, using HSMs. These are hardware security modules, like bank grade security systems. There's already crypto custodians doing that. We actually use one called Hex Trust here in Hong Kong. They're fantastic. And I think banks are going to be utilizing similar systems to custody crypto. And eventually, they'll do loans on crypto. And I think banks will eventually get into DeFi. although it'll probably be a number of years for most banks.
Yeah. In the history of America, when we had like the Western movement, the Wild West, and banks were like robbed on a regular basis.
Yeah.
That I guess that led to the FDIC insurance, and there was other reasons why. But now instead of bank robberies, we have hacks like the Dow hack,
Yeah.
and they're happening now. I mean, this is the second incident exploit within like less than a month. When they had the Rune hack, now we have this new one called PolyMarket, and I think
Poly,
before, what was it?
Poly Network.
Poly Network. Sorry, Poly Network. And these guys had it coming to them. I mean, they were tweeting at Charles Hoskinson, the founder of Cardano. They were like really trash talking and saying like, we'll bet $50,000 on our. I think they have like a betting exchange or something like that, or a prediction market. $50,000 that smart contracts won't come out this year or something like that. And he retweeted at them and he said, you people just make me laugh. And then like a month later, they lose what, $61 million or something like that.
611 million.
611.
Yeah.
I can't believe it.
Yeah.
Is that like how big is that compared to other hacks?
It's either the biggest or the second biggest hack in DeFi that's happened to date. Now, or some people call it a hack, some people call it an exploit. But in any case, it was they took advantage of vulnerabilities in the code, similar to how the Dow hack. A different ultimate mechanism, but and they're still discovering the exact nature of it. But
how did they even get $611 million into their chain in the first place? I mean, I never even heard of them before this.
Yeah, it was surprising. I had not heard of them either, and maybe that's displaying too much ignorance from me. But I'm also very focused on my own project, and kind of got the blinders on sometimes. I mean, I do try to keep a general sense of the markets, and I know obviously the big players. But I hadn't heard of this one actually, but it is, I guess, part of sort of the Neo and ontology ecosystem. If you remember those projects out of China before, and so I don't know all the inner workings of Poly Network, but it basically is a cross-chain protocol that is looking to do blockchain interoperability. So trying to do similar things as to what Polkadot and Ethereum is trying to do through layer 2 solutions and bridges, et cetera. And obviously Thor Chain is also trying to do the cross-chain interoperability. And so Poly Network is also trying to do that, and was doing that, to a degree. But basically, I guess there was a vulnerability in the code. Now, Slowmist actually had a great article about this. And Slowmist is a blockchain auditing firm, one of the leaders in the space. And so they did a sort of analysis of this exploit. And actually, Poly Network endorsed Slowmist's analysis of the exploit. So they're saying basically that they believe what Slowmist has identified is the correct thing. So people can read the article to get the exact nature of it. But I was actually sharing this article with my colleagues today because we always at Rio Defi look at whenever there's a big hack, a big exploit, we always take some time during the day to study it, learn it, what happened, because for us, sometimes we're a bit slower in development than other teams. I mean, we're also a startup, but it's important to do things correctly and to take the time to understand why these things happen, because especially when you're dealing with cross-chain interactions, there's usually some sort of centralization around the bridges, whether it be through a multi-sig or something else. So apparently what happened in this case was there was some sort of contract exploit where the keepers of this sort of multi-sig could be changed by doing something with one of the management smart contracts. And so this hacker / exploiter was able to take advantage of this to change the sort of multi-sig keepers to only one person, them, and then they could actually take everything. So they took everything from the Ethereum vault, from the Binance Smart Chain vault, or most things, and from Ethereum, from Binance Smart Chain, and also from Polygon. So it was like 253 million, I think, from one, and maybe 273 million from another, and like 82 million from another of assets. And so then the hacker was kind of trolling the Poly Network community with a bunch of messages, and actually supposedly now, and I haven't kept up with it in the past few hours, But they did say, the last thing I saw was that the exploiter had said that they're going to return the funds, and then they started to return the funds. So I don't know if all of them have been returned as of this video. I'll have to check and take a look. But yeah, I imagine it's going to take longer. But they basically they were saying, oh, I just wanted to become a legend or something in the hacking community or whatever. And so they said, I've had my fun. And there's also thoughts that they might be compromised already, because some of the security auditing firms were able to get their email address, their IP address also, and stuff. Now, whether those IP, they could have been using a VPN. I'm sure they were, right? If they're any sort of decent hacker / exploiter, they're not going to use their thing. And hopefully, I don't want to say hope. I don't want to teach people how to hack, but basically, and I don't know how myself because I'm not a programmer. But anyway, I'm sure this person, whatever the case may be, it's an evolving situation. So quite interesting, but it just goes to show that obviously this is a very and I actually had a friend, Mike, Box Mining, the influencer on YouTube. He had a tweet out today actually that he was significantly impacted by this because he was doing some yield farming in what he thought was a very safe way. Actually, as far as yield farming goes, there's various levels of obviously risk, but he thought what he was doing was relatively safe, and wasn't expecting that this huge multi-network hack would happen or exploit that drained all this value. And so he's like, shoot, all this stuff might go to zero. Now, if the exploiter returns all the funds, then all Michael and other people box mining like him will be restored.
That would be the first time that a hacker had ever done anything like that in this space, isn't it?
Certainly of this magnitude. Of impacting so many protocols, so many chains, sort of all at once. And it was interesting to see how the industry responded. Actually, Tether was one of the fastest to blacklist one of the stolen address funds, to freeze the money. And so
what did you learn from that? For and how did you apply the lesson here to Rio DeFi?
Yeah, so for us, it's always just a somber moment to look and make sure our own security protocols are good. So we reviewed our own internal security. We reviewed how we're still in the process of designing our bridges. So we're just making sure that they're not vulnerable to this kind of exploit. Obviously, the code base is totally different, ours versus theirs. But we want to make sure. Okay, let's make sure when we do have any sort of audit done that we, maybe we get multiple firms to audit it, or maybe we, have sort of redundancy or some sort of thing, so that maybe, also having insurance funds, things like this can be helpful. But first of all, to make sure that the multi-sig is in fact always going to be a multi-sig. For example, if you have to do any sort of centralization of the cross-chain bridge, obviously in the long run, you want to move away from that completely, so that there is no cross-chain bridge, or that there's no centralized parties in that cross-chain bridge ecosystem. Actually, Chainlink is doing some really, really interesting things around cross-chain bridges using oracles and sort of having decentralized sort of arbitration process. I don't know if it's an arbitration process, but some sort of governance process against fraud or manipulation and things like this. So, actually part of what happened today was I spent some time starting to look into some of the innovations Chainlink's been making around the cross-chain bridges, because I do think one of the solutions will end up being synthetic tokens. So you'll stake a token on one chain, lock it up. You'll have a synthetic token minted on another chain, using oracles to be the cross-chain messaging vehicles to relay those messages between blockchain networks. Of course, you have to make sure that the oracles are also unable to be manipulated or hacked or exploited, or whatever the case may be, because that is obviously the point of failure. Then who's ever relaying the messages between one chain and the other is a point of attack. So that's why I think it's the reason why there's no fully interoperable cross-chain networks that are fully decentralized and blah 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 at this stage, right? As far as I know, there's no one that does that yet at scale. and certainly if they do, it has some risks, right? And so this is sort of a learning opportunity in the blockchain space. How can we repair these errors? How can we move on from this as a community? And so, yeah, we always just take some time and to understand what happened, why it happened, how we can. So we reviewed again our own internal security policies, and just it's always, yeah, let's beef up our security, because that's the critical component. Because you can do everything right for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, but if you lose $600 million, that's no one cares what you did over 3 years if that's the kind of impact, right? And so, I mean, hopefully this resolves in a good way where the community gets their money back from the exploiter, but you can't bank on the fact that they'll give it back, right? So ideally you make sure it doesn't happen in the first place. And I can't blame anyone for this in terms of I don't know ultimately who's at fault or anything else. It's more about just taking the time to beef up your own internal security, whichever, as an entrepreneur in the blockchain space, I feel a huge responsibility to put security first and foremost in our thinking, because, especially since we're bridging CeFi to DeFi, that's critical to have systems that you can trust and to have, code that's safe, because you're dealing with people's life savings sometimes. Obviously, I don't recommend anyone put their life savings wholly into crypto. I think that's a very bad idea. It's a very, new and innovative space, and there's a lot of risk.
It's risk.
There's a lot of risk. So, but I still think cryptocurrency investments make a lot of sense. I myself is very invested into crypto, but don't put in more than you're willing to lose, right? Because these things can happen, and definitely don't put all your eggs in one basket, one network, one ecosystem.
It's high risk, high reward, and so that's the nature of it. So where's Rio DeFi in terms of its stage of development or evolution? Would you say that it's just like fully functional now, or is it still being built, or where are you?
We're definitely still building. So, I mean, I think, you're never done building in blockchain, that's for sure. But we are definitely very much in the early stages of Rio DeFi's development. So we've launched the mainnet of Rio Chain, but we are in the process of upgrading our chain to include Ethereum virtual machine compatibility, so that we can have smart contracts from the Ethereum ecosystem easily port over. So dApps, for example, can come onto Rio Chain much more easily after this upgrade. We're also upgrading to Substrate version 3, which will allow us to be more interoperable with the Polkadot ecosystem when their parachain auctions go live, and when the parachains and parathreads come into being. So we're definitely.
What are the primary benefits for an end user like myself of Rio DeFi that you're planning on delivering?
Yeah. So for the end user, it would be being able to get your money into cryptocurrency for the first time. So going from fiat currency into cryptocurrency. So we have a Rio Exchange that, as I mentioned earlier, we have a license. Maybe actually it might have just been you and I talking before the call. So we have a license in Estonia for crypto to fiat exchange. We've also applied for the Payment Services Act license in Singapore, and we're applying for different licenses around the world, because we think cryptocurrency will continue to be regulated, and it's important to be able to have the ability to get fiat currency into the system, because this is how you move from sort of the old world money system into the new money system. So building those bridges from fiat currency into cryptocurrency, and then also building bridges between different blockchain networks. So that's the interoperability thing, so that if you can do like DeFi within the Ethereum ecosystem, but then also bring that over and do DeFi in the Polkadot ecosystem, then you can have cross-chain DeFi, which is sometimes called cross-fi. So it's a sort of, multi-chain DeFi. And so for the end user, ultimately what we're going to do is to allow sort of the crypto native people to do their pure DeFi thing and make money through yield farming, through we're creating a product called DeFi pools to allow people to have the ability to, for example, stake our fuel, but get stable coins as rewards. And we'll use DeFi protocols to generate those yields on their behalf. So it can save them on gas fees. It can save them on the, convenience aspect, because it's very inconvenient if you have to go constantly change which protocol you're, farming on, and you have to, withdraw it every so often to sell it into a different currency to get it back into the stable coin. This can be quite a cumbersome process. And so if we can automate that for people, that's going to be quite significant. And then also for people that don't know anything about cryptocurrency, one of our key products is going to be basically a fiat savings account. So similar to what's offered in a bank, but obviously we aren't a bank, but we'll actually allow people to put fiat in, get a yield using DeFi on the back end, and get the yield back in fiat, so they can have essentially a high interest fiat savings account. And so we're working with some financial institutions to make that happen. And that's super exciting because then you don't have to know anything about cryptocurrency. You just put your money into this institution, and then using Rio Finance, we can generate the yield. Then that yield can get paid back to the customer in fiat. And so, this would mean someone who has no interest in learning about crypto, maybe, know anything else, they can support the cryptocurrency ecosystem by supporting DeFi protocols with, by turning fiat currencies into stable coins, turning those stable coins into working assets, generating yields across DeFi protocols to make stable coins, for example, more stable, maybe through something like Curve Finance and through other DeFi protocols, and then getting the yield back in fiat. So, that's sort of the non-crypto person. And then for the pure, crypto people, just making their yield farming experience much easier. And then also for people that just want to trade. So we have Rio Exchange that we're in the midst of finalizing. So you can have, for example, different pairings than you might find on other exchanges. You can also have more fiat options than certain exchanges. And we're also incubating different dApps to build within the Polkadot ecosystem via Rio Chain, so that you can have, so the primary benefits of Rio Chain are fast block time. So it's within 2 seconds. And we can process thousands of transactions per second. So up to 3,000 in testing. And then also low fees. So basically our fee is 0.1 R fuel. And R fuel right now, last I checked, it was around, as of the time of this video, is around 4.3 cents. So, this would be like less than a penny for the gas fees, obviously significantly cheaper than other blockchain networks. And so, this can be very critical for various DeFi protocols and dApps to have that kind of to be able to have that kind of speed and low fees, because, especially if you're a game, like, GameFi is a huge trend right now. And people are paying sometimes more in gas fees than like you might pay for, an NFT. Like the NFT might be worth $5 or $10 and you're paying like $20 in gas fees. Like that doesn't make sense, right? But it's happening. And to interact with a game, like if you can't have microtransactions, certain games don't work. Like you just have to build them outside of the blockchain. You have to build them in a centralized manner. But what if you have a decentralized chain with low gas fees? Then that's quite powerful. And so that's where that's why we built using the Substrate framework. And that's where we think Rio Chain and Rio DeFi as an ecosystem can really help people and help the whole blockchain industry to evolve, to become more useful for the average person. Because, I think it's through, NFTs are many different uses for them. There's the art side. There's sort of NFTs linked to finance in various ways. There's NFTs for deeds and titles of ownership of real world assets. And then, but let's just say art, for example, and then you have games, right? So, some people are really into money and finance and maybe even, I don't know, 10% of the world is, but like, even if you look at the global population, not everyone's invested in stocks. Like, yeah, we're, maybe middle or upper middle class people or whatever. But a lot of people don't actually have access to stocks, even let alone cryptocurrencies and this kind of thing. And, certainly they might not have the educational resources to understand it or to feel comfortable investing in it and this kind of thing. But everyone can understand art to a degree, right? Like there's aesthetic value to it. There's, it's a very visual connection. And for games, it's like, hey, I can play this. It's fun. I like it. It's enjoyable. So forget about finance, forget about investments. That's only going to tap into a certain percentage of the world's population anyway. What about games? What about finance? What about games? What about art? What about other creative things that, this sort of new renaissance that's kicked off through NFTs, I think is going to significantly increase adoption because, if we look at the actual Renaissance movement, back from after the medieval ages, it was led by art and then science followed. So in some sense, cryptocurrency has been led by science to a degree, with this sort of finance angle, with the technology angle, but now art's coming in. So I think science will grow even further in the future, but led by this artistic push will really be the catalyst for the next wave up in crypto, is my personal opinion.
Wow, I never heard that analogy being put that way before. That was really good. So it's sort of like a renaissance that is upon us here. We're going from sort of science to art and then back again to science. That's really, really interesting. So just to recap what you said about Rio DeFi, so the three main benefits, there are high yield savings, yield farming experience, and trading, right?
Yeah.
Now, we talked a little bit before the call, and you told me that you're at or you said to the audience here that you're at an NFT event. What did you learn? And yeah, let's start with that. What did you learn during the event today about NFTs? Was there anything that was really interesting to you?
Yeah. So first of all, for me, it was just great to be at an event with people because obviously during this COVID period, there's not many of those, and so it was a smaller event, of course, and people had masks and everything. But it was, I think the big thing I learned is that there are, in fact, a lot of people coming into cryptocurrency for the first time through NFTs, actually. And NFTs are what encourage people and give people the motivation to learn about the blockchain elements, to learn about cryptocurrencies, because they need to buy cryptos in order, like Ether mostly, to buy the NFTs. And so, if they have a goal, which is I want to own this digital art, and they have to go download a MetaMask wallet, they have to interact with some exchange, they have to do some sort of fiat to crypto transaction, it's a lot. That's a lot of barriers to entry that each one can potentially stop someone from getting involved. But because they have such a motivation to get this digital art, because they think it might, moon in value, or they just want to be a part of this community. One analogy I thought that was incredibly good was that NFTs are like a ticket to a community. I hadn't heard that put that way that before. And so they were talking about, especially a specific type of NFT, which is like the avatar style NFT, you could call it, where it's like, for example, the CryptoPunks, so there's only 10,000 of them. And, they follow this sort of standard avatar with, variations based on a formula or based on, whatever.
Yeah.
And then you have the Bored Apes, Bored Ape Yacht Club or whatever. So you have these like various series of NFTs. And so there ends up being a community that forms around it. I thought it was so cool. I saw people with the NFTs actually printed on their shirt, the one that they owned, and then printed on a hat. And I was like, shit, I actually have not seen that before. And so they actually had the Bored Ape that they own on their t-shirt. And, some of these apes are like, tens of thousands of dollars. I'm like, to me, it was mind blowing also because, I've been more focused on the finance elements. We are incubating a few NFT projects.
Yeah.
However, I haven't fully kept up with the sort of speculative art NFT side of things.
Yeah.
And, just briefly, like I've heard of these projects, but I wasn't like looking at the current prices or anything. So to see what the prices are, especially after the market rebounded in the past few weeks, it's like one of these NFTs, this guy was saying, it went from like 9 ETH to like 27 ETH in like 16 days or something. It was nuts. So, I mean, you're seeing these huge explosions in value, and it's definitely speculative. But, that idea of like an NFT being a ticket into a community and sort of art connecting people not just with each other, but also with ideas, with blockchain. I thought that was super cool. So I actually, it sort of was quite refreshing because, for a lot of, from an outsider looking into the NFT space, because I actually, it's kind of embarrassing, but I haven't bought any NFTs except for CryptoKitties back in 2017. I did a lot of those, and for like 1 month, and I tried to breed them and try to get all the rare ones or whatever. I got like no rare ones, but so for that I was like burnt off of NFTs for a while because like then the market crashed with the bear market, and then I was like whatever. I spent like way too much money on that, but you kind of look at it and it seems very speculative. It seems like pure gambling in this, but to think of it actually as like, no, these people were totally happy, even if the market, and maybe they're just saying this, but they were saying, look, even if the market goes down, even if this NFT, crashes in value right now, it's worth maybe $30,000 or whatever. Even if it goes down to like $5, I'd still be happy because I like this NFT. I get value out of seeing it as art, like I just enjoy owning it. And like, I'm a collector as well as an investor. So it's like, yeah, if it goes up, great. I want to make money for sure. That, that's always nice. But at the end of the day, I like collecting these things. Like I like seeing it. And so I was like, okay, like that was actually refreshing to hear because, you don't know what happens like if you're not in that community, right? And you can look at the NFT market and it does seem like there's like a lot of potentially like pumping of the various NFTs because it looks like there's maybe one person bidding on many, many things, but maybe they're just an avid collector, who knows? And so it can be.
So there's like a social aspect to it that doesn't exist in normal cryptocurrency projects that are like non-NFT projects.
I think so. I think there's like, depending on the project, there are various social elements, but I think there's definitely something with NFTs and art, especially that just taps into a different part of our, emotional brains and our right side, our creative brain that can really bring people together in different ways. And it was cool. Like I was talking to the one guy and, he had this NFT that had a deeper meaning behind it. And so, he's explaining this to me and I just thought that was like quite interesting and for people to, now have another outlet for connecting with each other, but also, how that connects to the broader financial space, how that connects to like art collecting, because there is so much good art in the world. And I think it'd be great. There's obviously different ways you can take it. You can turn physical art into an NFT and you could fractionalize it depending on how you do it. Some of those are securities, some of them are not. There's ways you can tie it into income streams. So I just think it's really cool to watch this space evolve as it has.
It's like the melding of the left and the right brain, and for the first time, where finance and art can come together.
Yeah, which is so needed because so many artists are, you have the starving artist meme kind of thing, and it's unfortunate because actually, if you look at how art has changed human society. We mentioned the Renaissance earlier, and it does lead the way to huge revolutions and in fact to golden ages. So like sort of the Renaissance was like kind of a golden age in humanity and came out of the dark ages, right? And so it was this, actually part of it was because of how humans started painting light into the paintings, changed people's thinking around what is possible, around what is holy, around the good and the ideal and the you had these churches built in very artistic ways, letting in light through stained glass windows and other things that like really inspired people and gave them pause to like really reflect and like think about how they're living. And so I think art has this like profound way of being able to touch us at our very cores as humans. And I think the melding of that with finance is super exciting because it's creating incentives for like otherwise just like purely left brain, cash focused, like profit driven VCs to be like, I want art and I want to invest in art and a lot of it, kind of thing. And it's like, oh, actually, this is like really beneficial for humanity, or can be. Obviously, I'm not saying all crypto art NFT projects are going to be good for humanity. Obviously, there's some scams out there and there's other things, but I think just the fact that this that art is being seen as like a profitable industry now to invest in as well, it is probably going to be a good thing because it can lead to a lot of innovation because it inspires people with a new way of looking at things, and that can have impacts in all parts of society.
Yeah, I think it's going to open up doors for a lot of people where people would never consider themselves as art collectors because it's out of reach for a lot of people. Now suddenly this can become part of any ordinary person's portfolio. And in fact, with NFTs, I believe that everything is going to be sort of tagged with value, and everything will have value, even things that are intangible like digital art. So yeah, I'm really glad that we can have a conversation like this today. Because we're witnessing I think the evolution of human beings. This is just the next level for us.
Totally agree.
Yeah. So what's the typical day like for you as a CEO?
Sure. So I do have sort of my projects that I'm working toward always, whether it be improvements on Rio Wallet, the upgrades of Rio Chain, the creation of new products for Rio Finance, tech development for Rio Exchange, and all the things happening there. Our incubation hub, helping advise different projects on how they can improve their token models, and connecting them with potential partners and investors and things like this. So there's all that, but then as a CEO and as an entrepreneur, there's also a lot of firefighting. So things come at me every day from all sorts of angles that I'm finding out about. Okay, we have this problem over here, fixing those things. So being able to be adaptable and flexible also is very important. Obviously for me here, actually tonight, it's like, past midnight. And so like a lot of times I'm working, between the US time and, Asia time and European time. We actually have some developers in Ukraine and also some in Belarus. And so we have people all over the world. And so working across these time zones and just checking.
Are you completely remote, or do you have like a location where everyone gets together at some point?
So, it's been much harder with COVID, but actually, so we do have a large office in Hong Kong with over 25 people at this point. We have an office in Shanghai as well. And we have some people spread out across Europe. And so most of the team, though, the core team is in Hong Kong. And then we have, different offices in other places to do, various things within the ecosystem. So
do you have an assistant to help you manage it all?
I would say I do have sort of a PA, and then also our COO has been hugely valuable to help drive things forward. So we and just the whole team. I mean, basically as the CEO, like I do a lot as well, but I also delegate a lot. So being able to have trustworthy people who are, have a sense of entrepreneurship as well, who can, not just do what's, being given to them as a role, but can also find where should the next step be. And so they, we definitely empower people to have decision-making authority within their role and to feel like they have a sense of ownership in what they're doing. And so, that's been hugely important in instilling that culture within our company. And actually, sometimes actually people will start as an employee and then they'll have a really good idea, and then maybe they'll become like a founder of an incubated project or something like this. Like that can happen. So we try to find which role people fit into best, but then also see where their strengths lie. And so over time that can definitely evolve. And so it's been interesting to watch that happen. So I'd say it's I also spend some time coaching people, and it's like just hearing what they're doing, and kind of connecting with all of our employees as well to really make sure everyone's being able to work at their best.
So do you work around the clock then, since your time zones are so spread apart, or do you have like a certain schedule that you operate on?
I do tend to work around the clock actually. Okay. Most of the time because especially as the market's heating up again, I think it's really important to the blockchain space changes so quickly, right?
And
so when I'm not, so I have different ways of working. A lot of maybe I certainly have the core office hours, like generally from 9:30 in the morning till like 7 or 7:30 at night. Go home, grab some dinner, and then work from home. If I'm not working, I'm off. I'm kind of a nerd, so I research a lot of stuff anyway, just for fun. So I'm often researching about different blockchain protocols. I'm looking into how other people do cross-chain. I'm looking into NFTs. I'm looking into, GameFi and all these kind of things. So, and that really motivates me and, gets me excited. So for me, it's not really work. It's kind of play in some aspects. So, I don't mind it. Of course, I need to decompress from time to time and just like think about nothing else, watch something on Netflix or like read a totally unrelated book or, go on a walk or go to the beach or something on the weekend. But like, I do work quite a bit, but I think that's for me, it's not like it's also play a lot of the time. I mean, obviously when when headaches or, the fires come, it can be like, stressful and this kind of thing. But at the end of the day, I mean, I feel so blessed to be doing what I love every single day. Getting to work with people who are super creative and very motivated and passionate about what they do. I don't think you find that in every industry. And so, I feel like in the blockchain industry, that's one of the things that's kept me here for as long as I've been, for these many years, is that like, it feels to me like most people that I've met are really passionate about something, even if it's just making money, right? But at least they're passionate about that, But a lot of people, are in this for the change that it can make for human society, and they're in it because they love the ideas or they love, the innovation or something like this. And so you have a lot of creativity, and for me, that's quite exciting to see and be a part of. So
yeah, definitely. So James, can you tell us, for those people out there who might want to reach out to you, if they can help you with the programming, Rust language, or if they want to reach you for any reason, what's the best way for people to do that?
Sure. You can reach out to me on Telegram. I'm at Liberty Buddhist. So from the libertarianism and the Buddhism. And then also my email is james@riodefi.com. So it's quite easy. Both ways are good. I'd say if it's more just to chat, contact me on Telegram. But if you have some sort of proposal or something, send it to me on email. And then, you can also find more about Rio at riochain.io or riodefi.com. It's actually the same site for now. And you can learn more about us. Also, we have a YouTube channel. We'll be doing more regular updates in the future. There's our white paper and everything else as well.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up here. James, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mustafa. This has been super fun to talk with you, and I really found a lot of value out of it. And I really wish your YouTube channel the best. I think it's great that you're sharing, helping people to see into the lives of various startup founders in the space. And I think your questions have been very good, and I'm really appreciative. So thank you so much.
Thanks for coming.